The diplomatic visit to the Zarian Empire had been carefully planned for months. Every human in the crew had been trained to follow rules, respect customs, and avoid wandering away from the assigned areas. Tom understood these rules well. He was a junior engineer, not a diplomat, and his job was to check the palace's power systems during the visit. He had no interest in politics, but he was curious about the alien technology. The palace was unlike anything Tom had seen before. The walls were made of a smooth silver-like metal that reflected light in soft waves. Blue crystals floated in the air, slowly spinning and glowing. Every hallway curved gently, and the floor seemed to shift slightly under his feet as if it were alive. He walked behind the human delegation as they were guided by Tazarian attendants toward the main meeting hall. Tom's eyes kept drifting to the strange architecture. He noticed thin lines along the walls where panels shifted to reveal hidden compartments. Small drones moved silently in the air, carrying scrolls and crystal tablets. The place felt like a mixture of art gallery and living machine. When they reached a wide hallway with several branching corridors, Tom slowed his pace. His hand brushed against a glowing crystal, set into the wall. It pulsed gently at his touch, and he felt a slight vibration through his fingers. He was so fascinated that he didn't notice the group turning round the corner ahead. By the time he looked up, they were gone. Tom took a step forward to follow, but the floor beneath him gave a sudden lurch. A circular panel shifted, and gravity seemed to change direction. He stumbled, arms flailing, and found himself sliding down a smooth tunnel of light. It was over in seconds, and he landed on a cushioned platform in a large chamber. He stood up quickly, heart racing. This was not the meeting hall. The chamber was open and bright, with tall windows showing the pale orange sky of the Zarian homeworld. Hanging gardens filled the air with the scent of flowers. Water streamed down the walls into small crystal basins at the far end of the chamber. A figure stood on a balcony. Her silver and blue gown shimmered in the sunlight. She was tall, graceful, and had the soft glow that was common among the Zarians. Her hair, pale as moonlight, was braided with strands of silver wire. Her eyes, large and bright, turned toward Tom in surprise. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Tom realized he had just entered a private royal chamber. He remembered the warnings from the crew about staying in restricted areas. His pulse quickened. The alien woman stepped closer, and he noticed the crown-like circlet resting on her head. It was delicate, made of interwoven crystal and metal, with a single glowing gem at its center. Tom understood instantly who she was. He had seen her in official images during the mission briefing. This was Princess Irina, heir to the Zarian. Throned, her expression was unreadable at first. Then her eyes widened slightly, and she tilted her head. Her gaze moved from his face to his uniform, then back to his eyes. "You are human," she said, her voice calm but carrying a note of curiosity. Tom straightened and nodded. "Yes, Your Highness. I did not mean to come here. I think there was a problem with the floor system." Irina's gaze shifted to the far corner of the room, where a small maintenance drone hovered silently. She made a small gesture, and the drone retreated into the wall. Then she focused on him again. "No human has entered this room before," she said. "It is not part of the tour your leaders are given." Tom swallowed. "I know. I was following my group, and then I must have stepped onto something by mistake. I will leave right away if you wish." She did not answer immediately. Instead, she stepped closer, her gown trailing softly across the floor. Her eyes studied him as though she were examining a puzzle. "I have never spoken to one of your kind in person," she said. "Your delegation is always kept at a distance. The council says it is better that way." Tom felt the weight of her words. The Zarian Empire and Earth had only recently begun open contact, and there were still many in both societies who distrusted each other. He knew the council guarded the royal family carefully. "I understand," he said. "I will not cause trouble. I will go back to my group." But Irina shook her head slightly. "You came here by accident. That is interesting. Perhaps I will allow you to stay for a moment. Tell me, is it true that your oceans cover most of your world?" The sudden change in topic caught him off guard. "Yes, He said, "The oceans are vast, blue water as far as the eye can see. They are filled with life, from tiny fish to giant whales." She listened closely, her eyes brightening. "I have only seen such things in holos. The skies above them are truly open." "Yes," Tom replied. "You can stand on the shore and see nothing but water and sky. The wind is fresh, and the waves are endless for a few moments." The room felt warmer. The tension eased. Arena asked about human cities, music, and the taste of rain. Tom answered as best he could, painting a picture of a world very different from her own enclosed palaces and controlled gardens. Then, from somewhere beyond the chamber, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed faintly. Rena's expression changed. She straightened and stepped back toward the balcony. "You should not be found here," she said quickly. "If the guards arrive, they will not believe you entered by accident." Tom felt a sudden rush of worry. He had no idea how to get back to his group from here. Before he could speak, Arena glanced toward a narrow side door hidden between two hanging gardens. "Go that way," she said. "It will lead you to the outer hall. From there, find your delegation. Tell no one you were here." Tom hesitated for a moment, then gave a respectful nod. "Thank you, Your Highness." Her eyes met his once more. There was still surprise in them, but now there was something else too. A trace of curiosity that had not been there before. As Tom slipped through the side door, he could not shake the feeling that this unexpected meeting was more than an accident. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he knew that their paths would cross again. Tom moved quickly through the narrow passage that Princess Arena had shown him. The walls were lined with vines that gave off a faint golden glow. The floor was soft under his boots, almost like walking on moss. He could still hear the faint echo of footsteps from the main chamber behind him, but they faded as he put more distance between himself and the balcony room. He reached the end of the passage and stepped into a quieter hall. The air here was cooler, and small windows let in beams of pale sunlight. He paused for a moment to catch his breath and get his bearings. He had no idea where this hall was in relation to the main meeting area. Tom began walking, hoping to find a sign or a familiar landmark. The palace was like a maze, with curved corridors that made it impossible to see far ahead. As he turned a corner, he almost collided with a tall figure. It was Princess Arena. She was no longer standing at the balcony. Instead, she was walking toward him as if she had been expecting him to take this path. Her silver blue gown shimmered in the light, and her pale hair seemed to catch every reflection. Tom stopped immediately, unsure what to say. His first thought was that she had come to make sure he left safely. His second thought was that, perhaps, she had changed her mind and wanted him to explain himself further. For a moment, they just looked at each other. There was no guard beside her, no attendant to translate or speak for her. The air felt still. "You move quietly for someone who does not belong here," she said at last. "I did not mean to move quietly," Tom replied. "I was only trying to find my way back." Her eyes narrowed slightly, but not in anger. "Do you believe you can simply walk into a royal chamber and leave without consequence?" Tom shook his head. "No, Your Highness. I am grateful you did not call the guards. I would like to return to my group before anyone notices I am missing." Instead of stepping aside, Arena took a slow step toward him. "You speak with honesty. That is rare in this palace. Most speak with layers of hidden meaning." Tom wasn't sure how to respond to that. "Where I come from, honesty is valued, but so is respect. I would not speak in a way that would bring trouble to myself or to others." Her gaze softened slightly. "Tell me more about your world. The way you spoke of the oceans made me curious." Tom hesitated. "If I tell you, will you help me find my way back?" Arena's lips curved in a small, almost playful smile. "Perhaps. But if you wish to leave unharmed, you must keep speaking with the same honesty as before." He nodded. "Earth is full of open spaces. The land stretches for thousands of miles, and you can travel for days without seeing a wall. There are forests where the trees grow taller than buildings, and deserts where the wind shapes the sand into waves. People live in cities, towns, and sometimes alone in places far from others. We can go where we choose. Her eyes lingered on him as he spoke. That is what I envy most, here, even as a princess. I cannot simply walk beyond the palace gates. Every step is watched, every word is measured. Tom realized she was speaking more openly than before. Why? He asked. The council fears danger from outsiders. They believe the galaxy is full of threats. That is why they limit contact with other worlds, including yours. She glanced away briefly, then back to him. They see humans as bold. That is why I have never been allowed to meet one until today. Tom felt the weight of her words. He had heard the diplomat speak about Zarian caution, but hearing it from the princess herself made it more real. Do you think the council is wrong? He asked out. Her eyes studied his face carefully. I think fear can be useful, but it can also be a prison. When I look at you, I do not see a threat. I see someone who stumbled into my world by accident, yet speaks with care. The quiet between them stretched for a moment. Then, the faint sound of footsteps reached them again, this time from the direction Tom had been walking toward. Rena's expression sharpened. You cannot be found here, she said firmly. Before Tom could speak, she gestured for him to follow her. They moved quickly down another side passage. This one was narrower and darker, lit only by the glow of the vines. After a short walk, they reached a door made of the same silver metal as the walls. Irina placed her hand on a crystal beside it, and the door slid open without a sound. Inside was a small room filled with intricate maps of the palace. This is an old navigation chamber, she explained. Few use it now. From here, I can show you the safest path back to your delegation. Tom stepped closer to one of the maps. It glowed faintly, showing lines and symbols that shifted when he moved his hand over them. Follow this corridor to the eastern lift, she said, pointing to a glowing path on the map. It will take you near the grand hall where your people are meeting with the council. But you must move quickly. Tom nodded. Thank you. I owe you for helping me. Her gaze met his. Perhaps one day you can repay the debt by telling me more about your world. I think there is much I can learn from you. For the first time, Tom allowed himself a small smile. I think there is much I can learn from you too. Irina stepped back and activated the door again. Go now. If anyone asks where you have been, speak carefully. Not every ear here is friendly. Tom left the navigation chamber and followed the path she had shown him. As he walked, he kept thinking about the strange mixture of caution and curiosity. In the princess's voice, she had every reason to see him as a stranger, maybe even a danger. Yet she had chosen to help him. When he reached the eastern lift, he took one last glance over his shoulder. The corridor behind him was empty, but he imagined her still standing in the navigation chamber, watching the glowing maps, thinking about the oceans he had described. Tom stepped out of the eastern lift into a broad corridor lined with tall silver columns. The air was cooler here, and the steady hum of the palace machinery filled the space. He moved quickly, hoping to rejoin his group before anyone noticed his absence. However, the grand hall was still some distance away, and Tom's mind kept returning to Princess Irina. The way she had spoken about her life inside the palace stayed with him. She had sounded curious, almost hungry for stories of places she had never seen. Before he could dwell on it further, a sound echoed from behind him. Light, quick footsteps. He turned and saw Irina herself emerging from the lift. His surprise was clear. Your Highness, I thought you said I should go back. She gave a faint smile. I did. But I also said I had never spoken to a human before. I decided I did not want this conversation to end so quickly. Tom hesitated. If someone sees you with me, will it not cause trouble? It might, she admitted. But I am not afraid of a little trouble if it means I can ask my questions. Her calm voice left him with no argument. They walked side by side down the corridor, though she kept a careful distance in case someone came into view. What do you wish to know? Tom asked. Tell me about how humans live, she said. I have seen images, but they are always chosen by your leaders. I want to know what it feels like to be one of your people. Tom thought for a moment. Most humans live in cities. There are tall buildings, busy streets, and many kinds of people. We work, study, and build things. But outside the cities, life can be slower. There are villages and farms where people know all their neighbors. Some choose to live far from others, near forests or mountains. Her eyes focused on him as if she were memorizing his words. And you are free to go wherever you choose. Yes, he said. If we have the means, we can travel across our world without asking permission from a council. We can walk into a field, climb a hill, or sail on the sea. There are no walls to stop us unless we choose them ourselves. A shadow crossed her face. That is what I do not have. Even my steps are counted. Even my visits to the gardens are scheduled. Tom studied her expression. Do you wish it were different? She looked toward the tall windows lining the corridor. I do. But change here is slow. The council values control over freedom. They believe it keeps our people safe. They reached a quiet alcove between two columns. Here, the light from the windows fell in soft patterns across the floor. Irina stopped and leaned slightly against the silver wall. I have heard stories about humans. She said, some say you are reckless, some say you are dangerous, but others say you are brave and will fight for what you believe is right. Which is true? Tom considered his answer carefully. Both, I think. Humans can be reckless. Yes, we take risks. Sometimes we make mistakes. But we also care deeply about our families, our friends, and our homes. When something is important to us, we protect it. That is why we sometimes seem dangerous to others. Her eyes softened. I think I understand. The council fears what they cannot control, and you are not easily controlled. Tom gave a slight nod. That might be part of it. For a moment, they stood in silence. The hum of the palace surrounding them. Then Irina spoke again. There is something I must tell you. Tomorrow, the council will meet with your leaders again. They plan to speak of limiting human travel in Zarian space. They believe it is a necessary step. Tom felt a sharp twist in his stomach. Why tell me this? Because I do not agree with them, she said firmly, and because I think you should be prepared. If your leaders hear of this without warning, they will see it as an insult. It could break the fragile trust between our peoples. Tom understood the risk she was taking by telling him, thank you. I will make sure my people know before the meeting. Irina looked around to make sure the corridor was still empty. I should return now. If anyone notices I am gone, they may start asking questions. Before she could leave, Tom said, if I see you again, will you want to hear more about Earth? Her lips curved into a small smile. Yes, and perhaps one day you will see my world beyond these walls, and I can tell you its stories. With that, she stepped back toward the lift. Tom watched her go, the silver doors closing quietly between them. When he turned toward the grand hall, he felt a strange mix of relief and concern. Relief that he had learned something important, and concern that their meeting might already be changing more than either of them expected. Tom reached the grand hall and found the human delegation gathered near a long table, where the Zarian council members were speaking in calm but formal voices. The council chamber was vast, with a high dome painted in shades of gold and deep blue. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, making the silver floors shine. He moved toward his group quietly, but before he could blend in, one of the Zarian guards at the door stepped forward. The guard's armor gleamed under the light, and his gaze was sharp. You, the guard said in accented English. Where have you been? Tom froze. He could feel several council members turning their heads toward him. The human diplomats looked surprised, clearly wondering why he had been away from the group. I was checking the energy relay in the eastern wing, Tom said carefully. It is part of my duty as an engineer. The guard narrowed his eyes. That area is not open to your people today. It is restricted. Tom was about to speak again when a calm, clear voice carried across the hall. He was with me. Every head turned toward the source of the voice. Princess Irina was standing near one of the great windows, her silver blue gown catching the sunlight. She walked forward with slow, graceful steps, her expression serene. The guard stepped back slightly. Your Highness, I was not told. Irina raised one hand. You do not need to be told everything. Guard Keller, this human was brought to me for a brief conversation about his world. I allowed it. Tom's mind raced. She had not just protected him from suspicion. She had also made it sound like his presence was intentional. The Zarian Council leader, a tall figure with deep green markings on his skin, spoke, "Your Highness, may I ask why you met with him without informing the council?" Arena faced the leader with the same calm tone. "Because I wish to. The humans are here to share knowledge." This man spoke of his oceans and forests, and I listened. There is no harm in that. The leader's eyes flickered with something Tom could not read, but he said nothing more. The guard gave Tom one last hard look before returning to his post. The council resumed their discussion, but Tom could feel that the room had shifted slightly. A princess defending a human was not an everyday event in this palace. When the meeting ended, the human delegation began walking toward the exit. Tom stayed near the back, but as he passed one of the side doors, he saw Arena standing there, her hands clasped in front of her. "You did not have to do that," Tom said quietly when he reached her. "I chose to," she replied. "If the guards had taken you away for questioning, it would have raised suspicion about where you had been. This way, they believe it was my choice to meet you." Tom looked at her carefully. "Why take that risk?" Her voice softened. "Because I believe in choosing my own path when I can, and because I do not think you are my enemy." Before Tom could respond, a faint sound of boots echoed down the corridor. Arena's gaze flicked toward the noise, and she stepped back slightly. "You should go with your people," she said. "The less attention you draw now, the better. We will speak again, but only if I can find a way that will not put either of us in danger." Tom nodded. "I understand, and thank you, Your Highness." As he walked away, he could feel the weight of the council's watchful presence behind him, but the memory of Rena's steady voice defending him stayed clear in his mind. It was the first time since arriving in the Zarian palace that he felt a strange sense of alliance forming. Outside the council chamber, the human delegation was escorted back toward their temporary quarters in the palace's guest wing. The walk was quiet, but Tom noticed that a few of the diplomats kept glancing at him, clearly wondering about the princess's words. He knew they would ask questions later, but for now, he stayed silent. When they reached the guest wing, Tom returned to his assigned room. The silver walls glowed softly, and a faint hum from the palace's power systems filled the space. He sat down, replaying the events in his head. Arena had stepped in without hesitation, as if she had already decided he was worth protecting. But the thought that stayed with him most was her earlier warning about the council's plan to limit human travel in Zarian space. If that happened, the trust between their worlds could crumble before it had a chance to grow. Tom decided that before the next day's meeting, he would have to speak to the senior human diplomat, even if it meant explaining that he had been in a part of the palace where he was not supposed to be. The risk was worth it if it meant avoiding a political disaster. As night fell over the Zarian capital, the palace lights shifted to a softer glow. Outside his window, he could see the strange orange-pink hue of the alien sky fading into darkness. Somewhere beyond the many walls and guarded corridors, Princess Arena was likely returning to her own quarters. He wondered if she felt the same mix of caution and hope that he did. The morning light in the Zarian capital had a pale golden color that made the palace walls shimmer. In the human guest wing, Tom was already awake before the call for breakfast. He had barely slept, his mind turning over the princess's warning about the council's plan. He dressed quickly in his formal mission uniform and left his room. The guest wing was quiet, but the Zarian guards stood at the main entrance. They bowed slightly as he passed, their faces expressionless. Tom made his way to the dining chamber where the human diplomats were seated. Plates of fruit, bread, and spiced tea sat on the long table. Most of the delegates were speaking in low voices about the upcoming meeting with the council. The senior human diplomat, a tall man named Harris, sat at the head of the table. Tom took a seat beside him. "Sir," Tom began quietly, "I need to speak with you before the meeting. It is important." Harris gave him a brief glance. "About what?" Tom lowered his voice even more. "I have reason to believe the council will propose limits on human travel in their space today. It will come without warning. If our side reacts badly, the talks could break down." Harris's eyes sharpened. How do you know this? Tom hesitated. I spoke with Princess Arena yesterday. She told me herself. Several nearby delegates looked over at them in surprise. Harris's expression hardened, but he kept his voice calm. That is unusual. Why would she tell you? She said she does not agree with the council's plan, Tom explained. She thought we should be ready. Harris leaned back in his chair. If this is true, it changes our approach. But you understand the risk in admitting you spoke to her in private? I do, Tom said firmly. But it is better you know now than find out too late. Harris gave a slow nod. Very well. I will keep this in mind when the discussion begins. The rest of the meal passed in careful silence between them. Tom could feel some of the other delegates watching him, perhaps wondering why a junior engineer had spoken directly to the princess when the time came. The human delegation was escorted to the main council chamber. The air inside was cool, and the sound of flowing water echoed from hidden channels in the walls. The Zarian council members were already in their places, tall and still, their colorful skin patterns shifting faintly under the light. Princess Arena was seated to the right of the council leader. She wore a gown of deep green and silver, and a matching circlet rested on her brow. Her gaze met Tom's for only a brief second before she turned back to the council table. The meeting began with polite greetings, but soon the council leader's tone shifted. Our analysis of human expansion suggests a growing presence in nearby systems. He said, we believe it is necessary to establish limits on human travel through Zarian space to protect our borders. Harris responded calmly, Earth respects the security of all worlds. But sudden restrictions will damage trust. Our people have only just begun to work together. The discussion that followed was tense. Several Zarian members spoke of caution, while the human side argued for cooperation. Through it all, Tom kept his focus on Arena. She spoke only once, her voice calm but firm. I believe that closing our gates too soon will only create more distance between our peoples, she said. There's value in keeping them open while we learn from each other. Her words did not sway the majority, but they slowed the push toward a final decision. The council leader finally said the matter would be reviewed again after further study. When the meeting ended, Tom felt both relief and caution. The danger had been delayed, not removed. As the delegations began to leave, a voice spoke quietly at his side. Walk with me. He turned to see Arena standing near a side corridor. Her posture was formal, but her eyes held the same curiosity. As before, he followed her into a quiet hallway lined with tall plants. The air was warmer here, and the hum of the palace machinery was softer. You warned them, she said simply. Yes, Tom replied. I could not keep silent. Her gaze was steady. Then you understand the risk you took. If the council suspects you had help from me, they will not be pleased. I know, he said. But I also know you took a greater risk by telling me in the first place. For a moment, they simply walked in silence. Then Arena stopped beside a large window that looked out over the palace gardens. I am glad you listened, she said. I will try to speak for your people when I can. But I cannot change the minds of all the council members alone. Tom looked at her carefully. Then we will both do what we can. She gave a faint smile. Perhaps that is enough for now. A sound of approaching guards made them both turn. Arena stepped back, her formal tone returning. I must return to the council chamber. You should rejoin your delegation before questions are asked. Tom gave a small nod. Until we meet again, Your Highness. As he walked away, he felt the weight of their shared secret. The warning had bought them time, but it had also tied their paths together more closely. He knew that whatever came next, the princess and the engineer were now part of the same quiet struggle. The night was calm in the alien city. The moon of the planet shone with a pale silver light over the tall spires and wide courtyards. Rian stood near a balcony, looking out over the glowing streets below. His thoughts were heavy. The treaty had been signed, but peace was still fragile. One wrong move could send both sides into chaos again. Inside the hall behind him, the alien Princess Leora was speaking to her council. The tall figures in shimmering robes listened as she explained the need for continued cooperation with the humans. Her voice was firm, but Rion could see the tiredness in her eyes. For weeks, she had been working without rest. She believed in the alliance, but there were many in her kingdom who did not. A soft sound reached Rion's ears. It was the slow, heavy steps of armored feet. He turned and saw Captain Turan. One of Leora's most trusted guards. Turan's face was calm, but his eyes showed concern. Human, Turan said, standing beside him. You should know that not everyone here agrees with your presence. Some still believe humans are dangerous. They may act against you. Rion nodded. I know. But if we show fear, they will think we are weak. I will stand here, and I will help Leora until the last day if I must. Turan studied him for a moment, then gave a small nod of respect. You fight not with only weapons, but with loyalty. That is rare. The meeting inside the hall ended, and Leora stepped onto the balcony. She looked at Rion, then at the distant stars. I have news, she said quietly. The council has agreed to allow human engineers to work in the capital. This is a step forward, but it is also dangerous. Some will see this as a betrayal. Before Rion could answer, a loud noise came from the street below. Shouts filled the air. Turan quickly leaned over the edge and saw a group of alien citizens gathered, holding bright signs and chanting. They were protesting the presence of humans. Leora's hands tightened on the railing. It begins, she said softly. The protests grew louder. Rion could see the anger in their faces. Many pointed up toward the balcony, toward him. One even threw a small stone that bounced off the wall below them. Turan signaled to other guards. They moved quickly to block the gates leading toward the palace. Still, the crowd pressed closer. Rion turned to Leora. Let me go down there and speak to them. She shook her head. They will not listen. They see you as the cause of their problems. Then let me show them they are wrong, Rion said firmly. If I hide, it proves their point. If I face them, maybe they will understand. Turan looked uneasy but stepped aside when Leora finally nodded. Very well, but I will come with you. The two of them walked down the palace steps and into the courtyard. The protesters fell silent for a moment as they saw the humans standing in front of them. Then the shouting began again. Rion raised his hands. I am Rion of Earth. I am not here to take your land or your people. I am here because your princess asked for my help. I am here because I believe we can build something better together. A voice from the crowd shouted, Why should we trust you? Your people fight wars. Your ships bring weapons. Yes, Rion answered. Humans have fought wars. But we also heal. We also build. We also protect. I have fought not against you, but for you. I stood with your soldiers in the north when raiders attacked your farms. I risked my life to save your children from the fires. Does that sound like an enemy? There was a pause. Some in the crowd lowered their signs. Others still looked doubtful. Rion continued. I did not ask you to forget the past, but I ask you to see the present. Your princess believes in peace. I believe in her, and I believe that if we work together, one day we will not speak of humans and your people as different. We will speak as one. The silence that followed felt long. Then an older alien stepped forward. His face was lined with age, his eyes sharp. I was there in the north, he said slowly. I saw the human fight to save our children. Perhaps we have judged too quickly. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some began to leave. Others stayed, watching Rion with new eyes. Leora stepped forward beside him. This is what I have been trying to tell you. Trust is not given in one day. It is earned. Let us give it a chance. By the time the last protester walked away, the stars had shifted higher in the sky. Rion felt the weight lift from his chest. If only slightly. Back inside the palace, Leora looked at him with quiet pride. You did not just stop a protest. You planted a seed. Rion smiled faintly. Seeds grow best when you care for them. We will need to keep working. Turan entered, carrying a small data pad. There is something else. Our scouts report unusual movement near the eastern border. We do not yet know if it is hostile. The room grew still. Rion exchanged a look with Leora. This alliance is still fragile, Leora said. If this threat is real, it will test everything we have built. Rhea nodded. Then we face it together. The moonlight spilled through the tall windows, casting long shadows on the floor. The night was far from over, and the path ahead was uncertain. But in that moment, Rhea knew they had taken a step forward, not just as allies, but as friends who would stand side by side in the challenges to come. The sky above the palace burned with strange lights as alien ships circled in the distance. The ground shook under the sound of engines and weapons being prepared. Aaron stood on the balcony, his hands gripping the rail as he looked at the approaching fleet. The princess stood beside him, her eyes filled with both fear and determination. The day they had both feared had arrived. The enemies of our kingdom had come in full force. Your people are ready to defend? Aaron asked, his voice steady, but his mind calculating the odds. They will fight, the princess replied, but they have never faced such a large force. Without help, we cannot win. Aaron nodded. He had already prepared for this. Over the last few weeks, he had been secretly sending messages to a small group of human ships that were stationed in the nearby sector. They were old friends from his days in the defense forces. He did not know if they would arrive in time, but he could not stand by and let this world fall. The palace gates shook as heavy impacts struck them from the outside. Enemy troops were already on the ground, pushing forward. Inside the courtyard, soldiers of the princess formed defensive lines, their armor shining in the flickering light. Aaron moved down from the balcony and joined the commanders. He began, giving quick orders. Pull the front line back to the inner wall. Do not waste your energy outside the shield range, he said. The commanders listened. They had seen how Arn's advice had saved them before. His strange human way of thinking often gave them unexpected victories. The retreat was fast but organized. The enemy pushed in, thinking they had the advantage, but when they entered the courtyard, they were met with heavy fire from both walls and towers. From the top of the highest wall, the princess stood with a banner in her hand, waving it high, for her soldiers to see. Her voice rang out across the courtyard. For our home, for our people, we stand together. The sound of her words seemed to give everyone more strength. Aaron fought alongside them, his human reflexes and quick aim making him a dangerous opponent. He moved from point to point, helping where the defense looked weak. Every moment counted. He could feel the battle pressing harder and harder against them. Just when it seemed the walls might be broken, the sky above roared with new thunder. 3 massive human ships entered the atmosphere, their engines bright and their weapons ready. They had come. Arn's friends had answered his call. The alien invaders looked up in shock as heavy blasts from the human ships tore through their ranks. The defenders cheered, and the enemy lines began to break. Arn's voice cut through the noise. Push forward now. Take back the gate. The soldiers surged forward, pushing the enemy out of the courtyard. The human ships continued their strikes, forcing the invaders to retreat to their landing craft. Within hours, the battlefield was quiet again. The enemy fleet was pulling away from the planet. Victory was theirs. The princess stood beside Aaron in the middle of the courtyard, the banner still in her hand. But now it was a symbol of survival. She turned to him and smiled, her eyes bright with gratitude. You saved us, she said softly. Aaron shook his head. We saved each other. Your people fought with courage. My friends only gave you the chance to win. The people of the city gathered in the square. They began to chant the princess's name, and then, to Arn's surprise, they began to chant his as well. It was a sound of respect, not just for a human who had fought for them, but for someone they now saw as part of their world. That evening, the palace held a feast in honor of the victory. The long tables were filled with food and the air with music. Aaron sat beside the princess, watching the joy on the faces of the people. For a long time, he had thought of himself as a stranger in this place, but now he realized he was no longer an outsider. He had become part of their story. As the celebration went on, the princess leaned toward him. When you first appeared in the throne room, I thought it was a mistake. Now I believe it was fate. Aaron smiled. Fate or not, I'm glad I was here. The night ended with the people lighting lanterns and sending them into the sky. Aaron and the princess watched as hundreds of lights rose above the city. floating higher until they looked like new stars. It was a symbol of hope and of a future they could now build. The war was not over. Aaron knew there would be more battles ahead, more dangers to face. But he also knew he would not face them alone. Together, they had proved that humans and her, people could stand as one, and together they would protect this world.